Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Backstage with Builders podcast, the show where we talk to founders, operators, and decision makers from the IT, SaaS, and Fintech industry, maybe outside of those industries, maybe in the future episodes, and we go behind the scenes to uncover what founders are actually building, how they are building it, and what challenges are they facing along the way, both business and legal. I'm your host, Akhil Mishra, a tech lawyer who is building his own legal firm, and today I'm with Pratheesh. Pratheesh is you founder of Capisso AI, and it's an AI-driven financial technology startup revolutionizing the accounting industry. And they specialize in automating bookkeeping and enhancing financial accuracy. Pratheesh himself is a software developer and AI entrepreneur. Originally from Kerala, India, he has spent 15 years creating over 350 tech jobs in his hometown. And now he's building his own thing. Welcome to the podcast, Pratheesh. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Akhil. Delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast.
Yeah, pleasure to have you here, Pratheesh. Like, just real quick for everyone here. Like, obviously, I gave the introduction, but I think it's best coming from you. Like, what does your company solve, and what do you do as a founder in your company?
Right. So, to answer that question, probably you might or might not be aware that 90% of all startups eventually fail.
Yeah.
Out of that, 70% don't even reach their 10-year anniversary. And the key reasons behind this failure is poor cash flow and tax management,
Right.
right? So, the idea behind Capisso came from my own experience where I missed a corporation returns filing, which led the revenue to send an audit request. So I had to pay quite a large amount as fines and auditor fees.
Right. That makes
So
sense.
that's where the idea for Capisso came. So the key goal was to build an end-to-end platform which would ensure compliance and sort of real-time bookkeeping for SMEs.
That makes sense. That's the best thing. I feel like one of the best founder startups are where founders are just solving a problem for themselves. Right.
Exactly.
Like every startup story I've heard of, it always starts with, okay, this is a problem I face, so I wanted to solve it for myself, and then figured out thousands and millions of people have the same problem. That's it.
Absolutely. And it is funny to say that I was being selfish when I first found it because all I
Yeah.
was thinking was my problems.
Yeah.
One of the things were keeping receipts. Absolutely painful part of running any business is to maintain your receipts and what you're doing, your expenses. So everybody will tell you traditionally, as a founder, as a business owner, you need to do this, and you need to keep your receipts, you need to keep your bank statement records perfectly. But in reality, most of the founders, their brains are not built to do those tasks.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that was my problem. So I decided I'll do something about it. And very soon, the MVP I built, I was using it to keep my own receipts, and the difference was amazing. Like just for myself, my sanity was being maintained. And then, yeah, I just kind of scaled it a bit more in terms of an idea and decided to go bigger in terms
That's
of
good.
what I want to target, what I want to accomplish. So my role at the moment is kind of the vision behind Capisso, what
It's
we are trying to
amazing.
solve, customers, as in finding customers, meeting, building that connection, going to events, networking, etc. And of course, the product design and lead as well. And I do a bit of coding now, but most of the coding is done by my team,
That makes
so
sense.
I can focus on other things.
That's good
So
though.
yeah,
So delegation is part of it, basically.
most important and most challenging skill any entrepreneur can learn is delegation.
100% agree with you. But like, walk me through like, but the first month, like, I feel like generally speaking, whenever you're building something, right, the early stages are like where you are like the most confident, where you are the most energetic. So like, what was it like for you during your first month?
So the first month of Capisso,
Yes.
right? Something I had heard is that any idea when you start as a startup or an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
first period is uninformed optimism.
It does make sense. Perfect. Can
Right?
relate to that.
You just think, yeah, this is the best idea on the planet. It's
Yeah.
going to work. but
Yeah.
you have no basis behind it at all,
True.
right? Now, I suppose this comes from our evolutionary trait of wanting to take risks.
Hmm.
If we never did that,
Hmm.
let's say believing, going with the evolutionary theory, we were all apes, we were all hanging around on trees.
Yeah.
So if we did not have that risk-taking gene in us,
Hmm.
we would never have left our safe haven and went and did something. So that's the case with Capisso as well. I was like, okay, this is going to make me millions, right? So I started with that enthusiasm. The first
Yeah.
month was mental, absolutely mental, because I had broken my knee, but I already started with a negative. I COVID
There we go.
around, and I had at that point I had a 6 month old child,
Right.
right? My
Congratulations,
first,
by the way.
well, back then,
Yeah.
my first child. So I'm trying to hobble around with one good leg,
Yeah.
not being able to go outside anywhere, which wouldn't have mattered because I was on crutches.
Right.
I'm trying to manage this 6 month old
Yeah.
who wants to go out, but we cannot go out anywhere.
Yeah.
And then trying to find the time to actually build something.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So yeah, if you ask me how it was, some of the toughest time ever to
That
face,
makes
because
sense.
it all went, but the thing was, it started difficult, which meant that all the other challenges that came after, I was like, okay, I've already gone through tough times, so well,
True.
we'll get through this as well. So that
That
was
makes
first
sense.
month.
No, that makes sense. But then, like, suppose now you have lived through that, right? Like, it's been a while since you had that first month, but I suppose you had the technology now to go back in time and talk to old Pratheesh. What's like one thing you would tell him? Like, okay, now you are starting with Capisso. Just get this right, at least.
I would spend more time on product market fit
Right. That's
and
the most important bit.
marketing and branding. So I would spend less time on the actual product build, rather more time talking to potential customers or
Hmm.
people who have the pain that I want to solve,
That makes sense.
getting their
Yeah.
feedback, and at the same time using that to build a brand and marketing campaign so
Hmm.
that before the product has even started being built, you
Hmm.
are creating customers.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That's good though. I like that. I feel like product market fit and just market research in general, right? In my personal experience, I feel it's like it's always lacking, right? Like a lot of times, founders are building something where they think, okay, the market has a need for it because I'm building it. It's the same, by the way, with my legal firm. I thought now I've put the banner out there, people will just show up.
Start coming in.
Like
Yeah,
never the case, right?
doesn't happen like that.
It's like never happens, right? But then when did you feel like, in at least in your case, like, okay, I have something real now, this might actually just work for me?
Okay, I had a bit of leg up in this case because prior to me starting Capisso, I'd already worked with accountants and I'd built workflows and AI based automation tools for a couple of firms,
Hmm.
during which process I knew the pain points existing within the market,
Okay, that makes sense.
which
That makes
meant
sense.
my assumption that the market needs it was not too far off the reality.
Okay, that makes sense.
So even without doing actual market research, I had done it by virtue of me working in that field.
Okay, so you had like pre-build even like assessment of the whole thing in a way,
Exactly.
right?
So I validated the requirement before I started building, even though I did not actively that was not the goal when I was doing those things. It just happened because I was working in that field,
Right, that makes sense.
which meant when I did start. So again, when I first started building it, I was not trying to kind of solve the pain for everybody. I had that pain, which others I knew were facing, and I wanted to solve it for myself. So at first, I created a sort of an automation workflow to solve it for me. And
That's good.
then I spoke to an accounting firm. I said, look, I'm trying to do something like this. Would you be interested? And they said, yeah, absolutely. They'll be interested to give me a hand trying it out, testing and giving me feedback, etc. So that was probably the most important step that happened. Again, I did not have to work really hard to achieve that because I was already in that space and I
That
had the
makes sense.
connection.
No,
So that's when, after that discussion, I thought, okay, there is definitely a good chance that this would be accepted by the market.
that
Now,
makes
again,
sense.
how big? I did not know. I still don't know because
Hmm.
there are other players in the market.
Hmm.
However, having other players in the market means it's a validated idea already.
Yeah, yeah. You had the spark basically. You just had the fuel, right, to
Exactly.
make it work. But then I feel like you must have spoken to a lot of founders along the way too, like while you're building this, right? And I feel like everyone has their own different story when they are building something, their own worries, like if I may say so. Then what is something that you might have noticed along the way that founders worry too much about? And then also on the flip side, not enough about something they should be worrying about.
Logo and website.
True, true. Yeah,
People spend so much time and money into what should be the a domain name, how should
yeah,
my logo look like, how should
yeah,
my website look like, the amount of time they spend on it. And I'm like, now I might have done similar stuff. So,
yeah,
but I kind of learned quite quickly that those things don't matter at all.
yeah.
Right?
I've had, by the way, cases where I've spoken to founders that couldn't register their business because they had 100 names to choose from. So they spent like 2 weeks going
Just
through
to
those
choose a name.
names. Yeah, just going
Yeah.
through those names. I was like, okay, like, okay, it's your business at the end. So, yeah,
That's, you're right. I mean, that for me, what I've noticed is just an utter waste of time and energy.
yeah, true.
And what they don't do enough is
Hmm.
product market fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Again, the product market fit, it's easy to say, but in practical terms, it's very difficult. As in, because if you are building something, you want to get it built. That is on your brain. Your brain, your days and nights are consumed with trying to build that vision into reality.
True, true.
So you don't put enough time into finding out, going out and doing the research. Does this really going to work outside in the market? Does anybody want this? Will
Hmm.
people pay for it?
Hmm.
So they don't do that.
Hmm.
It is an exceptional mix of skills for one person to have to be able to build a product and also have the ability to think of the commercialization or monetization of that product.
That makes
So,
sense.
best case scenario, you have two founders or two co-founders. One is good at the marketing and the whole commercial side, and the other is good at the product side. But that brings its own bigger problems.
Right, that makes sense. But you did, by the way, you never mentioned legal, so I have to ask that, right? You mentioned two sides and accounting and
Yeah,
firm, but then when
because
did you like figure out like, okay, I need like a lawyer's help with this company now?
from majority of the startup founders I've encountered, they fail even before they reach the legal stage.
Right, that makes sense.
So legal kind of is very important, but it's by the time you reach
Hmm.
the need for legal,
Hmm.
right? Either you have done something very well or you have messed up so bad that you are ending up with requiring a legal help.
That makes sense.
Okay, so that's why I haven't mentioned legal in the front. But this is what, if I were to give advice to the founders, right, I would say, okay, you have an idea. You think you need to get this out in the market in the next week because somebody else would have an idea and they might get ahead of you.
Right.
And because of that, you spend your days and nights trying to get it built, get it built, get it built. The minute you have that thought, okay,
Hmm.
spend the month getting the infrastructure, soft and hard, around that idea. And one of the most important is the legal aspect,
That makes sense. So like just
right?
build the foundation and infrastructure around it,
Build
right?
your
Yeah.
foundation, get your marketing strategy, talk to people, have some early adopters in place before you actually start digging that well.
Yeah, true. That makes sense. Because then you also like validate it from like even a legal perspective too, right? Like you are making sure, because a lot of times people might be building something, which I've seen. It's like they start building a product, they have everything, Now they realize they need licensing for it, right? And the licensing process is like 1 year. So they
Correct.
have everything in place. Now they have to just wait 1 year, not just taking away their time, money, and everything else, right? So that makes sense.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, go with the uninformed. Even if you have the uninformed optimism, first convert that uninformed into informed,
True.
which would most likely end up causing you to lose the optimism. You'll want to give up. But if you can get through that, still hang on to your idea, then focus on the foundation building.
That makes
So
sense.
especially compliance.
Mm,
So most founders, if not all, biggest problem they face is being compliant with the local requirements, which could be different for different geographies, right?
right.
So even simple things like GDPR, nobody
Mm,
thinks about it when you're building. They don't care. That's the last thing they think about. But have that in place. At least have the basic in place so that if you do get audited or somebody checks, you say, yeah, I have this, but I can improve upon it. Instead of saying, oh, I don't have it, which is worse.
that makes sense.
That if you have co-founder, get a proper legal contract in place from day one, or better, day zero.
Before you even build anything, right, with them. Yeah.
Before you start doing anything, before you sign anything, the first thing you should sign is agreement with your co-founder or
Mm,
co-founders. Who is doing what? What's their share in it? How is the exit,
mm.
etc. Have that covered. And you need a lawyer, a good one, a trustworthy, to go through that. Then things like employee contractor agreements, contracts. Have the blueprint for that. Yeah. Because my own experience with this, even though I did not have a co-founder, thankfully, because I knew there are these problems. So, but I had issues with a contractor
Mm, mm,
and a good friend of mine.
mm.
So that made me realize that it doesn't matter who it is, trust should be the last thing
That
when
makes
it
sense.
comes to business.
No, 100% agree with you.
You need to treat your business as an individual, as an entity with its own rights, so that bringing friends or partners or anybody on should not dilute the rights of the business. So don't think business is you or your co-founder. It's a separate organism, which means do the required legal paperwork or due diligence before it hurts your business or the idea. So I think I recently spoke with the founder, startup
Mm-hmm.
founder.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing amazing work. But even before they have built the product, they've already had to split with the co-founder.
Okay.
Right. So they reached this point where the most likely option was to close down the business
Mm.
before it had even
Yeah.
got out there.
Right.
Whereas if they had a legal agreement in place, all that could have been
Avoid it. Yeah.
maybe not avoided, but at least minimized.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, 100% that makes sense. Like I was even reading about this, and like a lot of people just tell me about this too, where it's like you might start something with like three people, right? So then it'd be like a team of three, and you might be the most motivated one out of the bunch, right? And the other people are not even working, right? So it's like, okay, like how do I even get rid of this person if I don't have
Right.
anything in agreement now, right?
Yeah.
So that just causes confusion, and it's like, okay, like where do I go from there? What do I even do here, right? And I can't even focus on building my product, which should have been the focus to begin with, right? So that's the main thing. Then like one final question for you, Pratheesh. Like what's the, like, it's obviously this is like the most generic one I have in my head, but it's the, I feel like the one of the most important ones. Like, what's the one set shift that you feel like you had gained over the years, which has helped you, like, even building your own thing, like company,
Delegate.
delegating?
Delegate or outsource any activity that doesn't require your particular skill.
That makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
I mean, yeah, most people it is difficult because almost everybody thinks I can do this faster and better,
Hmm.
which might be true. But if it doesn't need to be 100%, if you can live with 70%, delegate it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Because founders' time is probably the most important one.
Correct. Yeah. Time is the most important, valuable thing. Because if you are saying yes to something, doing a certain action, you need to think, what am I saying no to? That time you free up could be used on talking to one other person who could be your customer.
That's good though. I like that. Thank you so much, Pratheesh. This was amazing speaking with you. I'll add everything, Pratheesh, where you can find him, his company website, and everything down in the description. And again, it was lovely speaking with you, Pratheesh. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Akhil. Pleasure to be here. Yes.